The Secrets of Disney is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Ladies and gentlemen,
What's there, Mama?
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
How do you do?
how do you do what?
Show me the smile.
If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all.
Very nice. You can sit by me.
Everything's so wonderful.
Come on, get up. Come on, get up.
Where are we going?
Up to Neverland.
You must kiss me.
Excuse me?
Please, princess.
One kiss.
Unless you beg for more.
Hi there, and welcome to another Secrets of Disney podcast. Joining me today, I'm Deborah, by the way. Well, I'm so excited. I didn't even want to introduce myself. And joining me today is David Henlos.
Hello.
And Lisa Hendy.
Hey, happy to be here.
We are going to do a kind of a timely show. It's one of those shows that you're like, oh, if you ever listen to these things years from now, you'll remember that. But we're going to talk about something very timely in the fact that we're going to talk about how Disney and everybody else is handling coronavirus, the coronavirus scare of 2020. And we have a lot of information, and I have a little bit of experience with Disney security and Disney, I guess, emergency management, if you would. So this will be, maybe I'll say back in the day, and I'll kind of dwell on something that happened about 20 years ago.
In my day. Oh, wait, no.
Actually, I have a family health-related Disney experience to share, too, so that'll be fun.
Oh, really?
And it's actually even older than 20 years ago, but something we have not ever forgotten. So, but,
wow.
It's interesting, this topic. I mean, when we started talking about whether or not we should do this, it was 3 or 4 days ago. And I mean, the situation is so changeable that who knows by the time this actually is published, what things will look like. Because as we record, things are changing literally like day by day.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. And we have a release date of like every 2 weeks right now. So it could be, you might hear this and things have completely changed and things are closed and that were open and things are open that are closed, and you never know. But
dogs and cats living together, something.
Right? So as we're recording this, let's see, 3 of the 6 Disney theme parks are closed. So everything in Asia is closed. So Tokyo Disney is closed, Shanghai Disney is closed, and Hong Kong Disney is closed. And then the rest of them are operating as usual. And and a lot of people are wondering, hey, what happens, during this time? What will Disney do? Will they close the parks down? And here's my, I guess, my lesson from this is, then this will say how old I am. I started in security September 1st, 2001 at Disney. So like 11 days before September 11th, I was Disney security. And
You got trained up real fast, I'm assuming.
it was like, here's the pool, let us throw you in.
Wow.
Or dump it on you.
Right. And it was like, because that was, if you remember, I'm David's a little young. Maybe he doesn't.
I remember because I went to, I didn't go to, wasn't in Euro Disney, but actually I did an internship in France of all places. So I drove, but in the summer of 01.
Yeah.
So that was literally, and I came back in August of 01, like right before the hammer went down on security. So I have a very clear memory of before and after. Yeah.
And so if, and my memory is sometimes a little fuzzy too about that time frame, but I remember, all our airplanes were grounded at that point for like a month, maybe 2 months, maybe it was 3 or 4 months before everything kind of started going back to, I guess, a new normal for security reasons and for flights and for tourism. But I tell you what, Disney World and the people of Central Florida in particular, they suffered pretty badly. I know a lot of people who lost jobs.
Did they stay open? Did the park stay open during that time?
Yes, they did. They only closed on, I believe, September 11th, and I believe potentially the next day too on September 12th, for security reasons, obviously. But then they went back to normal. But the problem was that nobody was traveling because the airports weren't up and running for, I don't even remember how long that was. That seemed like months. So
I live next to a military base at the time, so it seemed like the whole world froze to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to keep a theme park open when half of your clientele is flying there? So, unless you were driving, you weren't going to get there. So, Central Florida and all of the tourist attractions across the world, not just, Disney World, although that was a big portion of it. They felt the brunt of that. And, so they did, I guess probably what I would suspect they would do in cases like this, it's kind of a tried and true thing, which is they scale back operations.
Mm-hmm.
They scale back operations. They kind of cut the fat a little, I should say. Like I remember about 4,000 people, middle management getting laid off, getting fired or getting offered early retirement. To save money. And also the parks were instead of opening at 8 a.m., or 9 a.m., which they usually do right now, they'd open at 10 or 11, and then they'd close early, like 5 or 6. So they'd scale back that way. And they did that for several months. And I know, people whose jobs were tied, not necessarily working for Disney, but working around Disney or working in Central Florida for hospitality. Like my roommate at the time was working for Hertz Car Rental, and he lost his job almost immediately. It was like, well, we can't keep you there. So a lot of people who were working in hotels and working in all those places, they lost their jobs or they got laid off, or and it took probably a year for the economy to come back in Central Florida. So Disney does not want to close theme parks for that reason alone. It's like it will destroy the economy of Central Florida. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like out here in California, Disneyland is open today. I'm looking at one of my favorite websites to look at is isitpacked.com.
Oh yes,
which will give you kind of like it helps you predict what are the best days to go, and it also looks at like real time crowds that are going on right now. And actually today in California, as we record, it's sort of one of those very rare rainy days, and things are actually looking still like there are people there. Like Millennium Falcon right now has a 25-minute wait at 6:38 in the evening. So, but what's the talk out here, which I know is the talk around the country, is that they're starting to kind of like make people close things that are large gatherings. So there's discussion about athletic events. My husband works at UCLA, and just announced today was the fact that all classrooms will be closed now. The kids are going virtual, and all the athletic events are going to go on, but no one will be actually allowed to be there. It's just the players will be playing. So.
And I think I work for the University of Nebraska, and that's actually the talk this week is preparation to go virtual. And which is hard for me because my job is actually supporting the physical needs of the department.
Whoa.
I'm like, oh, okay.
That's a little rough.
Yeah. So, because they were like, what can you do from home? And I'm like, well, literally half of my job is physically being there to answer phones and direct people. So not much. I won't be doing much.
And so the question with Disneyland is, if health department decides to shut down large gatherings of people, will that happen? So far it hasn't. And I was just checking, the Twitter feed and Facebook page and stuff like that. And there's no mention of anything like that. We're seeing articles coming out talking about you were going to talk about this, Deb, but the precautions that are being taken.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that's one thing, because they don't want to, scare anybody, and they don't want to take away from the enjoyment that is Disney. They're ramping up their precautions, and I know that I have several people that are in the Disney area or work for Disney or have gone to Disney this week. And so one of the things that they changed, and this is kind of odd, it reminds me of a very Catholic thing. You know, have you ever kissed a reliquary? Like, have you ever kissed a reliquary, like a saint? And they wipe it down right after you kiss it.
Same.
Well, yeah. So basically, when you walk into a Disney park, your ticket is tied to your fingerprint. So you put your fingerprint into a scanner or your finger into a scanner, and it lets you into the park. Well, they are wiping down the finger scanners after every single finger that's being scanned, which seems really quite excessive, I think. But it's
though, I mean, if they're telling us not to push the buttons in elevators and things like that, I mean, that's your fingers. Who knows where your finger has been? So,
right,
yeah.
And I imagine also, Disney's a very clean park anyway. I mean, they've always been prided on their cleanliness for the most part. I can imagine they're more rigorous than they have been with their cleaning and their disinfecting.
Yeah.
Maybe I used to do custodial when I was 19, and I believe our expectation back when we were cleaning restrooms or, cleaning areas was like, if restrooms, it's like try to hit them at least once an hour, if not twice an hour, to make sure that, there were no messes in there, and to wipe countertops and to, clean up and disinfect what needed to be disinfected. So I imagine they probably ramped up their custodial.
David, I'm curious with little kids. I mean, I remember when my kids were little, they touch everything. Are you talking about this at home now and trying to train them, or just not taking them out, or?
Well, not taking them out as much, but I mean, they still go to school right now, so they are around other kids. But even the schools right now they turn it into a God bless my the first grade teacher. She's actually turned it into to be healthy, we have to wash our hands when we can't touch our face. We have to be, she added into the healthy living thing. So there was a whole thing for the last couple of days about, not touching your face and washing your hands whenever you do anything, and cover your mouth, sneezing in your arm, that kind of stuff. So we've been covering that too, but yeah, it's just, at this point, the best we can do is just teach them good hygiene and not go out to a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. Hey, I have to pause here for a second. You know what I didn't do? Start my own recording.
Oh.
But I started the Skype recording. So you think Dom would be okay if I turned in the Skype recording?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just started it again. I'm going to make note of the time on the Skype. Like, I must have been way too excited. Okay. All right. So, anyway, yeah, we were just talking about children. Sorry.
No, I appreciate
totally
that.
Distracted. Okay. So I'm going to give it a little bit of silence here. So we were talking about children for a second here, and I know that that's a big concern. I don't know if you caught the memes on Facebook of, like, the little girl licking the railing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the more you tell them not to, the more they do.
Which is another reason why sometimes it's just easier just to keep them in the house.
Yeah. Well, I know you had talked about you were planning a trip to Disney, David, with your family, like the spring. Have you stopped talking about that, or?
That's probably moving towards the fall now.
You might be able to get a really cheap airfare.
Yeah. My wife actually was supposed to it's still on from what we know, but there's a conference in April that she was going to go to in Seattle. And all of a sudden, the flights are way cheaper. So,
yeah. Just so you know, David, at the time of this podcast, recording, Omaha to MCO is $100 per person round trip for April. And I'm like, no.
Oh my goodness.
It's so tempting, isn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something to really talk about is is it a lot of people pre-plan their Disney vacations, they pre-plan hotel rooms, they pre-purchase their their tickets for the parks, they make reservations. Like, if for some reason in the event that things get closed down, is there a policy that the company has for reimbursement of these things?
Yeah. You can, other than airfare is a little sticky, but even the airfare, like all the major airline companies are kind of waiving their change fees right now. Delta, they're all releasing statements right now saying, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to, do change fees. Hey, we'll do change fees, all the, reduced change fees or no change fees all the way up until the end of this year for certain airlines. And Disney, although they can't control your airfare, they can rebook your package. So if you were planning to come, like, say you were going to go to Disney next week and you're like, oh no, as long as you rebook, like you call Disney and say, hey, I'd like to rebook this maybe in August, they'll do that for you. Sometimes they'll charge a fee, like a change fee. I know the last time I changed a reservation, about a month ago, they did do a change fee of $50, but that was, I think, a separate incident. I think that had something to do with a component on the package. But then within 2 weeks, you can call and change without much penalty. But then if you cancel, you'll get penalized. If you are outside that 2-week window, you can actually, there's not a lot of penalty going on. So you can call and cancel. Airfare, like I said, might be a penalty. You might have to deal with that separately. If you booked it all together, there might be some penalties with that. But if you booked your airfare separately, it's usually not a problem. This is a good time to talk about, you should probably get travel insurance whenever you book something big like that. I know a lot of people, I'm one to gamble, but I could see the merit of it this month for sure.
Yeah, I've made that mistake, and I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I'm now going to just say, okay, just purchase the travel insurance. So I was like, really, that extra $35? I just don't know. But there's a lot, there's a lot that can happen these days. That it's sometimes it takes something like this to remind us too.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did send Lisa and David a YouTube video. So right now, Disney is, especially Disney World, is I would say business as usual. It's probably less crowded than it normally is this time of year during spring break. But the video I sent showed, people in line for all the rides. And
I really liked that video. It was really cute.
He was fun. His name was JoJo. And I don't know, I can't remember the name of his vlog, but he does a very positive, very energetic JoJo's World vlog. And he went around. There's a new ride that opened just in March, just this month, called Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railroad, which used to be the Great Movie Ride. And so he was showing the line for that, and it's still at 300 minutes if you want to go stand in line for that. But it doesn't seem to have deterred this people from going to ride, the Star Wars attractions or the new rides that are going on in its Flower and Garden Festival and at Epcot, and I think it's Food and Wine Festival in California right now.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, a lot of people are having the reaction that my two sons, who are both young adults in their 20s, are having, which is, wow, airfares are really great, hotel rooms are very cheap, and maybe this is a great time to go out and travel if you're young and healthy, and you want to take advantage of some of these things. That video made me think, Deborah, of the story that I wanted to share, which was our personal experience that happened in that park. He was at Hollywood Studios, and I remember this story of being at Disney World when I was very, very pregnant. Actually, I don't know how I let myself do this, but I traveled 8 months pregnant to Disney World with a 3-year-old son, Eric.
Wow.
And we were in one of the rides at Hollywood Studios. It was called something. Was it called like MGM Studios? I think back then,
Yes,
back
it
in the
was.
day. And so we were on a ride, and my little toddler son had something that didn't agree with his tummy, and he got sick on the ride. And so the very nice people who were working there actually came and got the two of us and took us to basically the infirmary, the small hospital on property.
Mhm.
And took us in there and checked us in. Well, we walked in the door, me looking extremely pregnant and him crying toddler. And they immediately thought that I was the one who needed, the health care, when in reality, it was really Eric who was sick to his stomach. And so they checked us in, and they checked out Eric, and he was running a little fever. So it was really wonderful. They actually sent out for fresh clothes for him. Somebody went out, found his size clothing, brought him back a full, complete outfit. And then they arranged a driver to take us back to our hotel. We were staying in one of the Disney budget properties, and the driver took us there. And when we got there, he said, "Do you have a thermometer?" And I said, "No, I don't have one." And he said, "Let me go get you one." And he actually went and purchased a thermometer for us and brought it back.
Wow.
Yeah.
The level of service and care for our family. I mean, we were both so disappointed because we had wanted to be at the park, but I was like, I am sold forever on how much they cared to make sure that we were really safe and healthy. Is that an atypical experience, or?
No, that's pretty typical. I have a similar experience, but not like I was sick. But I remember distinctly, this was 20 years ago, I was working graveyard shift at Disney's Grand Floridian Hotel, and in the middle of the night, we had a Japanese interpreter call us and say, "Hey, one of our Japanese tourists is sick, and they need to go get medicine." And so we arranged it for him. We went. There was like at the time only one all-night place you could get, one night all Walgreens you could get medicine. So we sent Bell Services out to get their medicine for them. And then because they were Japanese, they're not traditional, they don't have a traditional breakfast like we did. We actually asked the kitchen to make the wife chicken broth. Or a miso broth. It was like a very clear broth, and we blew up balloons, and we took a card, and we at 6 a.m, we delivered the medicine, her chicken broth, and some balloons to her, and said, "We hope you get better soon," through the interpreter.
That is so nice. And those are the things that really, I'm sure as an employee, it makes you feel really good to do something like that.
Right, because it's like it's no fun to be in a foreign country where you don't speak the language, and B, sick and it was probably their honeymoon. They were a young couple, so to be sick on at Walt Disney World in a strange place where you don't speak the language and you don't have the comforts of home. We try. Cast members try to make it. Everybody tried to make them feel so welcome and included and like home and like family. So I think that's
awesome.
Yeah. So I think that's not atypical. I think that's very typical.
Of Disney, at least.
Of Disney, yes. I don't know. I've been in a lot of places where it's like, "Oh, you're sick. That's too bad. There's Walgreens down the street. Take an Uber."
Yeah.
So it could be that mentality too. It just depends on who you're talking to and what kind of mood they're in and how busy they are. We're all human.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if there was a Ronald McDonald Land nearby, they wouldn't do that there. So, just guessing.
Right.
I'm just taking a look at, we've had so much discussion about cruise lines, and we know that Disney cruises are now a very big thing. So I was just looking to see if there was any information on Disney cruise lines, and this one particular website that I'm looking at is saying that Disney cruise passengers may cancel trips scheduled to sail before May 31st as little as a day in advance and must redeem their credits within 12 months of their original cruise. We haven't yet heard about any Disney cruises being docked offshore.
Right.
I was in San Francisco last week, and I actually saw the cruise ship that just today was allowed to come dock and get get disembarked. Drove past it when I crossed the Golden Gate Bridge, and there it was out there in the ocean.
Those poor, those poor
Oh, yes.
poor Princess Cruise Line, because they've had the brunt of it, it seems. But I know it's okay. So I do travel planning on the side. I have my own travel agency, and it's effectively killed my it's like I will not be getting any of these Nebraskans to take a cruise unless they're like it's a good deal. But yeah, the CDC actually came out and said that you should probably not get on a boat, which is not helpful at all for everybody who depends on that for.
And guess who booked a cruise the week before all of this started? Me.
Oh.
Not a Disney cruise, but my high school reunion is planning a cruise for actually next February. So we're pretty far out. But definitely my husband, who already was reticent to go, is now saying, probably not really going to be going on that cruise with you.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I mean, I almost asked Sherry to come on tonight. I haven't heard from her because, she being in Hawaii and her husband's a doctor and they have their own practice. She says she's seen an uptick of parents bringing their kids in saying, test them for coronavirus. And so she's getting ready to be quarantined. She's like, I wish I could travel because airfare from Hawaii right now is really cheap. And she would go to Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, this is the state we're living in. And, but there is a glimmer of hope, I want to say, because I know that the Orlando Sentinel yesterday put out an article about Disneyland in Shanghai, and they have an opening date. They have an opening date for Tokyo Disney too, and it's soon. So
awesome!
Yeah, so Tokyo Disney will open mid-March again. Probably limited. Like a slow open, not like everything's open. Come on, it's probably like hotels first and then, shops and then restaurants and then, the theme parks themselves under limited hours or limited whatever. And then I know Shanghai Disney will be opening around the first week of April, which is really great because they are, they're kind of in the ground zero of China's, 80,000 people with coronavirus. So, and they are actually doing a very slow opening. So they're going with just hotels first and their version of downtown Disney or Disney Springs, like their shops and all that at limited capacity. But they're going one step further than Tokyo. I find this fascinating is that they're going to make every resort guest wear a mask and monitor their temperature throughout their whole time there.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, are they going to do that?
That's that's a lot of. Go ahead. Sorry.
No.
And masks.
Yeah, and then they'll get a card, like a card.
A magic band.
Yes, a magic band that can be scanned at every restaurant before they're even allowed to sit down in the restaurant. That will probably say, like, oh, they're okay to come in here and eat, or they're okay, their temperature is, blah, blah, blah. So that's going to be a massive undertaking. I don't even know how that's going to all work. I'm kind of fascinated to see if anybody will cover that, how that's going to work. And I wonder if Tokyo, Japanese are usually, you see them wearing masks all the time. Anyway, it's part of their culture. If they're even the least bit under the weather, they're going to be wearing a mask. So I don't think they have to tell anybody, hey, if you want to go to Disneyland in Tokyo, you'll wear a mask. I imagine they already have that covered.
Deborah, I'm curious, when the parks are closed, typically, so Disneyland closes on a typical night at midnight. The park is not actually open. Is not actually empty when it's closed. People are in there doing cleaning, gardening, and things like that. So in these closures, do you think there are actually people that are on site, like still kind of a skeleton crew?
Yes. I believe, if I were Disney if I were there, I probably would see, their engineering staff, their horticulture staff, everybody, especially at Florida, if they had to close a theme park, they'd probably close Animal Kingdom but they would have the veterinarian staff there just to keep the park, spruced up and ready. And then probably custodial and security will never go away. So any typical night, because I did 5 years of graveyard.
Wow.
Working. Yeah, it was a long time. I did security and front desk. And I know security in the park, past 11 o'clock at night, it was security, custodial, engineering, and occasionally what would have contractors like building or painting and horticulture. So those are always in the park all the time. I imagine that's what's going to happen, is that they've taken this opportunity to repair things. They've probably taken this opportunity to massively clean everything, and and also maybe do some training and make sure all their cast is healthy. And I know everybody who's probably doing the business end of things, probably going through risk management scenarios and coming up with policies to implement upon opening. Like, how do we make sure that our cast members aren't coming to work sick? What do we do in the event that one of them is? Because actually, there is, even though we don't talk about Disneyland Paris, there was a case of coronavirus among one of their cast this week.
Whoa.
Yeah, so a graveyard cast member who was an engineer tested positive for coronavirus, and then they had him quarantined, and I think 3 of his coworkers got quarantined with him. But this is just the new normal. Is how do we deal with, and then how does Disney deal? The royal we. How do we deal with the loss of staff for that particular duty? If we lose all of our custodial staff, who's going to clean the park?
So that's actually one of the parks that was still currently open for business, Disneyland Paris. And so I haven't read the article yet, but did they actually say in terms of people who might have been exposed to that cast member? They think?
They don't think anybody, because he worked graveyard. So,
okay.
He's never been in contact with visitors since he worked nights at the park. So, other than, the people he obviously lives with, and that there were 3 other cast members with him, they were, told to stay under quarantine. Okay, here's a secret of Disney. This is a true secret of Disney. Are you ready for this? Okay. Right. When you are an engineer at a park, and you're like a ride engineer or Imagineer, you are assigned usually to an attraction. Like, if you're going to be at, like, say, Muppet Vision 3D at Disney Hollywood Studios, there are maybe 4 to 5 crew that work that attraction only, and that's their home base, and they stay there, and all they do is do all the repairs and maintenance and cleaning of that attraction and safety inspections. So, you're literally talking about a very small crew of people that will be working on a ride, but they don't usually go work on, like, if you're working at Tower of Terror, you don't go usually work on a different ride. You usually stay at that ride. So, in a sense, that contains who's working there that night.
There was actually this official statement that came out too from Dr. Pamela Heimel, who is the chief medical officer for Disney, for the Disney parks, and just kind of a party line policy document that came out, a letter it came out yesterday, basically saying they're working really closely with the CDC to monitor things and giving the basic recommendations and stuff. So good to know that they have their own. How do you get to be the chief medical officer for Disney? That's a super cool job.
I know, right?
It's actually arguably cooler than being on the Enterprise.
You would be shocked at the amount of risk management and policy in place, and the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes during, crises or, things that happen at the park. Disney has their own EOC, Emergency Center, that works within the county's emergency center, and they have people from, from the FBI all the way to the Secret Service to, to the CIA, advising them if they need to about, anything. So Disney's well informed. I know cast members who actually worked with members of the FBI and CIA or in the Secret Service for like legal things that would happen at Disney. I feel like I'm revealing a lot of secrets this week.
That's why it's
We're
called
okay with it.
Secrets
Really
of Disney.
Here's the thing is that most people don't realize that there's a lot of counterfeiting activity that happens in Central Florida, especially at Disney, where people will bring their counterfeit bills to Disney to cash them in.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, doesn't it? So there's a lot of vigilance around paper money there just because of that problem. And there's a lot of people that will be fugitives, unfortunately, with Amber Alerts. A lot of times parents who are not supposed to have their kids will take their kids and go to Disney with them, because what do you do with your screaming 4-year-olds? You take them to Disney because that'll make everything right. And so
people will tune it out too.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, so they'll deal with a lot of that, a lot of custody or issues such as that. So there's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong, but Disney has a handle on a lot of different legal or law enforcement agencies here in the United States, and they keep that quietly to themselves until I blab it all out on Secrets of Disney.
Well, it'll be really interesting to see, the next time that we're together to record how this plays out, what happens next.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. It's we will probably in the future, the next time we record. I also want to talk about something that happens at Disney that's very seasonal too, and maybe next time we'll talk about Easter or religious holidays at Disney. That's always fun.
Oh yeah.
That'll be a more upbeat episode than talking about coronavirus.
Yeah.
But for the time being, everybody's enjoying their time at Disney. From what I could see, people are snatching up those discounted rooms and tickets and deals and airfare and going down there. So business as usual.
And if any of our listeners have been there during this time, definitely let us know what it's been like, what's been different, and what your experience has been.
I know that one of my friends posted that they had put hand sanitizers at most of the restaurants and a lot of the attractions and around the park, so you can sanitize your hands a little more readily.
Can't imagine how much that costs right now.
Right? Liquid gold. I really do think that, Disney's prepared for that anyway, because they usually have large warehouses full of supplies at the ready. So it probably wasn't that big of a deal. They probably had, I imagine a long time ago, remember N1H1 or H1N1?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember hand sanitizers being available, I believe, during that outbreak too.
Wow.
I didn't think about it that much, but that affected 1.5 million Americans. It was a pretty big outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
But we survived that one. We'll see about this one. Yeah, but business as usual, I guess. Do you have anything to say? Any advice you would give? I know I've talked a lot, but I'd like to know what kind of advice you're giving people around you when dealing with situations like this.
David, go for it.
Oh, me? I'm just pretty basic, because I'm an expert in very little. Just trying to keep the basic sanitary stuff of, if don't, try to avoid coughing on people or getting coughed on, wash your hands. And I'm struggling with even that, and then just avoiding large gatherings of people for now. And because, that's the larger the group, the less there is you can control.
Right. I saw, this is not Disney related, but it's Italy related. I know some of you might know who Mountain is who does the Disney or the Catholic Traveler, and he's situated in Rome, and he, basically said, hey, yeah, everything's open in a sense for business, but it's everybody's on lockdown too, but you can still roam about and get groceries. There's plenty of toilet paper to be had, and people are trying to live. Well, no, I know.
Not here.
His advice, and he's such a good friend of SQPN. When you talk about advice, I immediately thought of two things, and he is one of the things, which is for those of us who have friends who work in the gig economy, Uber drivers. My son is a musician. I know for me as a speaker, things are getting canceled left and right. And I'm very blessed that we're not feeding our family on my speaking income, but this is people's livelihoods. And so, where we can support our friends in those economies, it's really important to remember to do that. And the second thing that's always on my mind is I have elderly parents. My parents are living in assisted living, and their schedule has been completely turned upside down, and they now can't have any outside visitors. They're in the city of Chicago, and it's because they are really among those who are the most at risk for something like this. But it's hard and lonely, all of a sudden be kind of stuck in your room with nobody to come and see you. And so if you have a loved one who's elderly, now is a great time to pick up the phone and call them. And let them know that you're thinking of them and that you're praying for them, and just to try to give them something happy to think about, because most of them are sitting around watching the news, which is not very happy. So
no. But anyway, if you want to weigh in on this topic, I know that Lisa has been really great about posting these great podcasts on her Facebook page. She's gotten a lot of feedback about people's favorite snacks this week.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of Dole Whip going on. Maybe not pumpkin spice Dole Whip, but Dole Whip in general. A lot of ice cream, a lot of Mickey pretzels going on over there. So it's nice to have that. But if you want to weigh in on this and say, hey, I was there, or you want to talk about anything pertaining to Disney, or you want to know more specific secrets about Disney that I may or may not be able to talk about, you can definitely email us at disney@sqpn.com. You can also, I've been looking over our page on sqpn.com, and you can leave comments there. I'll check that out occasionally and make sure we're getting our feedback in, and we think it's fun to talk to you about Disney too, so we'll try to answer all these questions if we can, or say, hey, I like the Main Street ice cream place too, but it's a nice community place to go to talk about all things that we do for SQPN. So you've been listening to us here at StarQuest Production Network. And you can find us at sqpn.com/Disney. You can email us, like I said, at Disney at sqpn.com, or follow us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. And we also have Twitter at SQPN. And I'm Deborah Shaban, and joining me today was Lisa Hendy and David Henlos. And we'd like to thank you again for joining us for the Secrets of Disney on StarQuest.